Good morning, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Can you hear me? Somebody answer, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
We can hear you.
Can you switch on your camera? Yeah, Akshay Puneet, I guess it is. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hanumantu Nayak,
Yes, sir.
can you hear
I
me?
hear, sir. Yes, sir. I hear. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can.
Hanumantu Nayak, is it coming clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is clear.
It is clear.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. If it is clear, fine. Okay. Since you say you can hear me, and since you're meeting me for the first time, let me introduce myself. I normally look like this, okay? But if I wear these glasses, this one is meant for distance viewing, and it is not very conducive for short distance like this. So I take them off, but usually I wear these glasses. So if you see me in the department, I'll most probably be having those on. Well, my name is Satish Chandra. Okay. I specialize in Western political thought as such. And unfortunately for you all, you have to do 2 papers with me. Okay, you have to do this paper called Western Political Thought 1. The 1 signifies that there is another paper on Western political thought, which will be in your 2nd semester. Okay, that will be Western Political Thought 2. Okay, that's in the 2nd semester, not in the 1st semester. I'll be sharing the syllabus with you, the full syllabus of this semester tomorrow. So this is one paper that I'm teaching you. This paper has 5 credits. Okay, now don't really ask me as to how these credits are calculated. Padma Navanand, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think you should mute your mic because there is some disturb.
No, sir, that's not from my side. My mic was muted.
Somebody has a mic on and there is a lot of disturbance. Could you please mute your mic so that it doesn't, somebody was, okay. All right. Actually, I would prefer it if you put your video on and mic off, because otherwise it looks like, it basically looks like I'm talking to no one. And that's the big problem with all these online classes. No. Okay. All right. Now, this is Western Political Thought 1, which I'll be teaching you. And the other paper that I'll be teaching you is also from the 1st semester, and that is called Political Ideologies. Okay, that is there in your set of optionals, right? It is something that you'll find in your set of optional papers, and that's a 4-credit paper as opposed to this, which is a 5-credit paper. Now, the thing that I cannot explain is how they have arrived at these credits, number of credits, how they have arrived at them. Different universities have different systems of credits. So you probably should be asking somebody who is more conversant with how the credits are calculated and what does that mean for you. Anyway, so my taking these 2 papers reflects a bit of a problem for you. The problem it creates for you is that number one, we'll be having two continuous classes, okay, which will be from 9 to 10:40. As long as we are on the online mode, these will be the hours that I will be engaging with you, 9 to 10:40, because it's actually 50 minutes per class, 9 to 9:50 and 9:50 to 10:40. The next class will be 10:40 to 11:30. Then it'll be 11:30 to 12:20, and at the final class for the day will be 12:20 to 1:10, and that's where it ends. I'm told that the university basically promotes Google Meet as its preferred tool. The problem with Google Meet, as far as I am concerned, is that it does not allow for screen sharing, which is what I'm doing now. Okay, it doesn't allow for me to put slides. Now, having said that, let me clarify. I'm not a very big fan of using slides. I don't believe that these slides are teaching tools. They aren't. They are usually more like corporate tools, these PowerPoint presentations. They are corporate tools, and they're also a bit of a training tool. But having said that, my experience in Osmania University has been that we get people who um, are mainly from a rural background, and are not, and English is not really their strongest point. So if it is teaching in a classroom, then I have a blackboard on which I can write a few things so that they become clear to my students. But in an online setting, when there is no possibility of using a blackboard, then it becomes absolutely necessary to use some kind of a PowerPoint slide so that you can at least understand what it is that I'm saying. My request to you is read the slide, but don't just keep reading slides and not listen to me. Okay, because the slide is not a standalone thing which can give you information fully. So that is the reason why, even though the university says that it prefers Google Meet, I'm using Zoom so that I can use these slides, and you have this takeaway. The second reason why I am using Zoom is because recording is under my control. Okay, if I take Google Meet, then I cannot record it. I cannot record it. The recording will be with the systems administrator of the Usmania University. If I use that which they are giving. And by not having the recording under my control, I have a problem. So let me explain that problem. What I normally do is, as soon as the class is over, I upload the class onto the recording of the class onto YouTube. Okay, I have my own YouTube channel and I upload the classes onto YouTube. And what I also do is once I have uploaded the channel, the lecture onto YouTube, I get a link and I post that link on your WhatsApp group. Okay, I post that link on your WhatsApp group, which means you can access the uh, lecture again whenever you like. All you need to do is click on that link. In fact, actually, you don't even need to do that. All you need to do is go to YouTube and type AV Satish Chandra lectures and it'll take you to my lecture page. But if you find that difficult, this is what you can do. You can go to your own WhatsApp group and you can click on the link that I post. Okay, and the lecture is available. So this, as far as I am concerned, serves two kinds of purposes. The first purpose that it serves is that if for some reason somebody is not able to attend a class, then they don't have to miss out on everything completely. The class is available on YouTube. That's one thing. The second thing is if somebody has some problems, okay, if somebody has a problem and somebody has not really understood part of what I'm saying, then you can again go back to YouTube and listen to it yet again. Having said that, let me also tell you that I encourage dialogue. Okay, I encourage dialogue within the class. So if you have any problems, sorry about this. If you have any problems while I'm teaching, you can raise a question, raise an argument, counter what I'm saying. You can do any of these things. Okay, so I'm open to that. So you don't have to wait till the end. When you feel like asking a question, just put your hand up and say, I want to ask a question, and you can then go ahead and ask a question. I encourage interaction that has a uh, positive effect. One is that it'll break the monotony of listening to me droning. And the second thing is that it'll give you also an opportunity to express your own thoughts about something. Then there is the question of the difficulty that I'm going to face in teaching these two papers to you. Now, I don't know how this happened, but that paper, the second paper, which I should be teaching you, called Political Ideologies, is something that ideally should have been there in the third semester. It should not have been there in the first semester. And the reason why I say that is that it is a contemporary political theory paper, that particular paper, and it basically assumes that you know a lot of things, that you know things such as John Rawls's philosophy or libertarianism of Friedrich Hayek and Robert Nozick. Okay, it assumes all those things. Now, unfortunately, while I'm doing the differences or the commonalities between these three things, which is okay, when I'm doing these three things, while I'm trying to establish what these words mean, while I'm trying to do this particular thing, I am going ahead with an advanced paper where I'm dealing with John Rawls's liberalism. I'm dealing with libertarianism, all of which are 20th century phenomena, sorry, and most of which are also those which have where you need special kind of inputs. Especially you have Nancy Fraser. Now, if I have to teach you Nancy Fraser, then I'll have to go into the feminist uh, movement, because Nancy Fraser is primarily a feminist, though she later on became much more than just a feminist thinker. She is somebody who is more than a feminist thinker. I mean, she is primarily a feminist thinker. And then you have, I think you also have Hannah Arendt. Okay. And all these people, if you're looking at them, then basically what it means is that you know all the things that are supposed to have been taught in the first and second semesters of Western political thought. In second semester, it will be called Western political thought 2. Okay, so that paper, Political Ideologies, assumes that you know all these things. But while in your BA, I don't know how many people come from what background, which places you have done your BA. I do know for a fact that political thought is not something that is taught the way it should be in most places. Okay, and perhaps many of you have gone through the Telugu Academy books, which are not the best way to learn political thought, even if they are in English, because it's one of the more complicated subjects, and it is something that requires nuanced thinking. By that, I basically mean that when I talk about nuanced thinking, all I'm saying is that there are no broad brush strokes. It's not like painting your wall with one color. Okay, it's not like that. What we are looking at is the fact that there are extremely uh, fine differences between different systems of thought, between different philosophers. So, if you look at all those things, then it becomes absolutely necessary uh, for you to understand these differences so that you don't confuse one for another. Now, for instance, we will call John Locke a liberal thinker. In the same breath, we call John Rawls a liberal thinker. But is the liberalism of Locke in any way comparable to the liberalism of Rawls? If it is comparable, in what ways is it comparable? And if it is not comparable, in what way is it not comparable? Okay. Now, there are a number of people who have unfortunately even misunderstood Rawls and have basically written books claiming that Rawls concerns himself with the idea of distribution of social wealth. Now, Rawls never did that. What Rawls concerned himself with is the redistribution of primary social goods, as he calls them, not wealth, but primary social goods. And it's not a distribution, it's a redistribution, which means that there are things which are already distributed. Now he wants to change the nature of that distribution. So when you're looking at these kind of things in Rawls, then it becomes necessary that you also understand uh, that he is heavily inspired, very obviously, by the German thinker Immanuel Kant. And if you read Rawls carefully, you will also see that Rawls is inspired by Rousseau. Now, Kant is somebody who uses the category of the moral very, very obviously, whereas Rousseau doesn't use it so obviously, but the substratum of all of Rousseau's philosophy has to be understood as morality. Whereas if you go to John Locke is not somebody who believes or doesn't talk, let's say, of morality. Neither does his predecessor, who's not really a liberal, but just a proto-liberal. I'm sorry about that. Uh, a proto-liberal whose name is Thomas Hobbes. Okay, and so we have to understand a number of things: liberalism, political economy. Um, we have to understand um, the different strands of liberalism. What do they signify? And how Rawls is different from all these people? How libertarianism is different from all these? While it is called libertarian, there is no doubt that it is something that fits in with the category of liberalism itself. And that's what makes teaching political ideologies extremely difficult. Because at one level, here we are discussing the most basic of things. We are trying to understand what is thought, what is political theory, what is political philosophy. Are they different or are they the same? If they are the same, then why do they have these three different names or three different designations? Okay, and then we are starting the other paper simultaneously by assuming that all these things, not just the differences between political thought, theory, and philosophy, but also the different schools of liberalism, that Marxism, all these things, different schools of Marxism. Okay, because there is no one school of Marxism. There are different schools. There is the Bernsteinian school, which is uh, called revisionism, and, and then you have Lenin on one side, and then you have Engels, Friedrich Engels, despite his having co-written uh, many works with Karl Marx. You will find that there are some things in Lenin uh, which pose a difficulty to Marxist thought. One prime example that I can think about is dialectical materialism. Okay, I'm sure you've all, at some level or the other, studied that Marx talked about dialectical materialism. Let me disabuse you of this particular idea. Okay, Marx never ever talked or wrote about dialectical materialism in any of his writings. You can search, you won't find that expression. All right, and so what is it that you will find? What you will find is historical materialism, not dialectical materialism. Then the question is, why did dialectical materialism come into the vocabulary of Marxist thought? The answer to that is because of the fact that people think that there isn't much of a difference between uh, Marx and Engels. There is a possibility of conflating Engelsian ideas with Marxist ideas as well. Okay, and that's where the problem arises. Now, dialectical materialism is a completely Engelsian construct. This he used in the dialectics of nature. And since he used this in the dialectics of nature, what you must understand is that the idea of dialectical materialism creates a theoretical obstruction to the idea of praxis, Praxis, that we find in Marx. Okay, Marx believed in praxis. What is praxis? Praxis is a Greek word, and it essentially means that something that does not differentiate between theory and practice. We in these times we have a tendency to say, in theory it sounds good, but in reality it is not practical. The Greeks didn't do this. The Greeks didn't do this at all. What the Greeks believed was that if something was good theoretically, then it is something that had to lend itself to application in practice. So for them, that is praxis. Now, conflating dialectical materialism into Marxist thought creates this one problem. And then, of course, there are other kinds of problems. If we have to do feminism, then we can't start with Nancy Fraser. Okay, we have to start with the earliest feminists, who'll be people like Mary Wollstonecraft, and it'll I can hear a cockerel and some wind blowing. Thank you. It reminds me of a Bob Dylan song where he says, "The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind." So, anyway, yeah. So, I have so far explained that we have this particular problem with these two papers, okay, because political ideologies assumes you already know what is there in Western political thought. Well, if you've had good teachers at your undergraduate level, then that'll make things a little easier, I guess. But if you haven't had such great teachers at the undergraduate level, then it'll make the thing a lot more tougher for me. But I suppose these are not things that one complains about. These are things that one works around and tries to find a solution to the problem. So that is basically what we will be doing. But before I proceed further, I also want to tell you that on all days of the week, that is from Monday to Saturday, with the exception of uh, holidays, we will be having my class from 9 to 10:40 every day. Okay, and this basically will be done by following a certain strategy, which is 3 days of the week. It's not possible for me to till 10:50 take a class on political thought and say, okay, now this is the end of political thought for today, and move on to political ideologies. It doesn't work that way, because that is a sudden gestalt switch, to use an expression from Thomas Kuhn. And that gestalt switch is something that just doesn't work, because you can't switch off suddenly where you are and start something else. So 3 days I will be teaching Western political thought, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And 3 days I will be teaching political ideologies. That'll be Thursday, uh, Friday, and Saturday. I understand that you have one difficulty, and that is uh, you'll have to switch uh, from Zoom to another mode of um, another software. You'll have to go to Google Meet. I am not sure how many, if you're using phones, I'm not sure how many phones actually support Google Meet. A lot of people in the past, when I've tried to use Google Meet, people have told me that their phones are not supporting Google Meet. So I really don't know how that you will handle. But every day I'll let you off, hopefully, because I have a tendency, as you might have found out by now, that I'm droning and droning. So I tend to drone and not look at the time, and therefore I sometimes overshoot the time, and I have to be careful not to do that, because there is somebody who's going to follow at 10:40. So I'll try and let you off at 10:35 so that you can basically, uh, what do we say? You can basically take a 5-minute time to shift from Zoom to Google Meet or whatever that is being used by the others. Okay, so at 10:35, I'll kind of wind up every day so that you can have this time for this. So the syllabi for both the papers I shall share with you tomorrow the complete syllabi, and then we will be in a position to go about doing our teaching by knowing what is coming next. Otherwise, it will be like a very bad suspense. There's no thrill in it, so it's a bad suspense movie wherein you don't know what's going to come next. So I think I should share the syllabus with you, and which I shall do so tomorrow. Uh, Ideally, I should have done it today, but I don't have that immediately available with me for the other paper. For this paper, I do have, but the other one, I don't. So I thought I'll share the syllabus of both the papers on the same day so that you can see how one is required for the other. Now, having said that, the first unit in Western political thought is a comparison of these three phrases: political thought, political theory, and political philosophy. That is the first unit. The second unit goes into the Greek political thought. It's about Plato and Aristotle. Okay, and the third unit, if I'm not mistaken, goes into the church-state controversy, as it is called. Technically, it shouldn't be called that. I'll tell you why when I reach that. It should be called the Sacerdotium Imperium uh, controversy, and I'll explain the reasons when I go to that point. And then, of course, we have to do Niccolo Machiavelli in the third unit. And I think the fourth unit, we will be doing the social contractualists, which will be Thomas Hobbes. Then it'll be John Locke. And then there is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. These three are social contractualists, but not all of them are the same. In fact, each of them is very, very different from the other. And Rousseau is completely different from both Hobbes and Locke, though you can say that Hobbes and Locke perhaps have at least one or two similarities. One similarity is that they are both individualists. Okay, but there are differences. The differences are that Locke is a proper liberal thinker, and Hobbes is not a proper liberal thinker. Like I told you, he's a proto-liberal. I'll explain what proto-liberal is later. And we should also be looking at the fact that Locke is not just a political thinker. There is also a very big section on political economy that is endemic to his political thought. So it is for a good reason that he is classified as a political economist with what am I saying? With Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, and all these other people. Okay, he's called all these. He has these similarities with them. Having said that, I would even go a step further and say that people like Smith and uh, Ricardo hardly have a very strong. Why is it people are leaving and coming back? Uh, there is this thing that their argument that there isn't a very big political dimension to um, Adam Smith, Ricardo, and all of them, so they should technically be classified as liberal economists and not liberal political economists. Uh, but for a moment, let us say they, along with John Locke, constitute this whole thing called uh, political economy. Uh, if you come to Rousseau, Rousseau turns back in a way on people like Locke. He doesn't agree with him on most of the things. It's a totally different genre. In fact, some people question if Rousseau is a liberal thinker. I will pick up that question when we start talking about Rousseau. So that is going to be your fourth unit. And your fifth unit is going to be um, on the utilitarians, which means Bentham, Jeremy Bentham, and John Stuart Mill. Having said that, I would like to tell you that John Stuart Mill isn't strictly speaking a utilitarian. His father, James Mill, was a utilitarian, and most of his early studies were done through homeschooling by his father. So there are obviously uh, influences of utilitarianism on uh, John Stuart Mill, especially in his early life. But with the passage of time, he's kind of changed. He started going away from utilitarianism, though he did write an essay called Utilitarianism. But he also was somebody who was quite a bit of a revolutionary, and there is a moral component to his thought as well. And sometimes, if you read Mill carefully, it looks like he's probably bordering on being a socialist and not an individualist. Okay, and he believed in the equality of the sexes. He didn't believe that women were in any way inferior to men. He himself had this thought, but this thought of his was reinforced after he met Harriet Taylor, who was an activist of women's rights. And Mill basically talks about, the subjugation of women in an essay that he wrote. Uh, he married Harriet Taylor, but she didn't. she died not too long after the marriage. But Mill continues to be a very important figure in Anglophone philosophy, because Anglophone philosophy, by that I mean philosophy that came from the English speaking world, it doesn't acknowledge morality too much. Okay, it's not too concerned with morality. But a lot of what Mill says and does is something that concerns itself with morality, so much so that he even got a pat on his back from Karl Marx, who was his opponent, because Marx believed in socialism, and Mill, despite his radical ideas, remained an individualist. Uh, but then, if you look at his writings on the antebellum, uh, uh, on the subject of antebellum laws in the United States of America, the antebellum laws were those which came into being uh, in the southern part of the United States of America. Antebellum actually stands for plantation. Okay, it stands for plantations, and Mill is so radical as to say that he is somebody who will, I mean, he is somebody who extends support to the slaves. Okay, in the during the Civil War, and he was for the abolition of slavery. He stood for the abolition of the antebellum laws, and he went one step further and said that the Negroes, you shouldn't say that nowadays, by the way, uh, that'll be taken as being extremely offensive. But he wrote Negroes, so since I'm quoting him, I'm using that word. The word to say today is either Black Americans, or better still, African Americans. Uh, so he says the Negroes should be given some property from those people who subjugated them to slavery. So Mill is probably one person who understood the word slave in its most proper sense. Okay, because he equates the subjugation of women and the question of subjugation of Negroes, he equates them under one head, which is slavery. Okay, so he seems to have had that understanding in its most nuanced form. And if he had them, and since he had that in its most nuanced form, he was somebody who was able to present us with a pretty good picture of what slavery actually means. Now, talking of slavery, there's another thinker who talks about slavery, and that is Aristotle. And when we talk about Aristotle, a lot of people have accused Aristotle of being retrograde. Phone companies are entering the class Redmi, Vivo, Oppo. That's nice. It's good that corporations are taking academics and that too political thought seriously. Yeah, but that joke seems to have gone unnoticed. Anyway, my sense of humor is like that. It's rather poor and nobody finds my jokes funny, which is something I have to live with. One way of dealing with that is probably not joking at all, but instinctively one jokes or tries to joke in my case, as it is in my case. Anyway, so people have called Aristotle a retrograde thinker because he supported slavery. But you must understand that slavery, as understood by Aristotle, is completely different from slavery as we understand it. Okay? Slavery as we understand it is also not very clear, and that is why I said Mill is very important. Mill is extremely important for the reason that uh, you find him giving us a very clear definition of what slavery actually means. When he says subjugation, okay, we tend to use the word subjugation, and not always are we familiar with what subjugation is all about. We aren't always familiar with that. Okay, so that will be the biggest contribution of Mill. When we go into the second semester, we will be beginning with Hegel and T.H. Green, and that's Thomas Hill Green. And then we will be going to Karl Marx and the other Marxists. For some special reason, Mao has been included there, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then there is Antonio Gramsci, the Italian Marxist who began as a supporter of the fascist party. He began as a supporter of the fascist party, but he ended up being, he isn't a total Marxist as say a Lenin is. Okay. He's eclectic. He's eclectic in the sense that there are many influences on Gramsci. He ideally should not be studied as a part of Marxist political thought. Okay, because there are influences that range from Machiavelli to the Roman Catholic Church, and then a bit of Marxism. In fact, on the question of civil society, you will find that Gramsci is somebody who completely disagrees with Marx. He also disagrees with Marx on what the proletarian revolution should be. So I think he can stand alone as a thinker without having to bracket him in some category like Marxism, because he's not a full-fledged Marxist. Okay, and then if I'm not mistaken, there is Habermas, Jürgen Habermas, who started as a critical theorist and went on to become, um, what should I say? He went on to become a philosopher in his own right. And then there is Michel Foucault, and somehow to the end of all this, there's John Rawls, along with Robert Nozick. I might have missed one unit there. I'll have to see which unit that is. But that's not what we're going to be doing this semester. That's what we'll be doing next semester, provided I'm still alive. So when I use the word civil society, I told you that not the word, the phrase civil society. I told you that Gramsci is somebody who disagrees with Marx on what constitutes civil society. Okay, and civil society as such uh, has been a dynamic concept. It was first talked about by Aristotle, who called it Koinonia Politicae. I'll give you the spelling. Koinonia. Koinonia. It's not pronounced koinonia. It's pronounced koinonia, actually. Politicae. All right, and that's a part of the teleology that you find in Aristotle. Something, again, that I'll discuss when we actually do Aristotle. When this got translated into Latin by Romans, they basically translated it as societas civilis. Okay, SOCEITAS, societas civilis, CIVILIS, which got translated into English as civil society. Now, the important thing here is, where is the word society in Koinonia Politicae? There is a word politics there. Okay, Politicae. Koinonia is to be understood as association. If you really translate that, the best translation you can find for Koinonia Politicae in English is political association. Some people translate that as political community. I would ask you to refrain from using that word community and using the word association, political association. Why did that get translated as societas? Why did politicae become societas? Society. Okay. And why did association become civil? You have to interrogate this. And when you interrogate this, you will find that this particular word, and this is where I'm going to start teaching. I'm not going to go into I'm not the sort who goes to the swimming pool and says, let's put on our swimming trunks and swimming costumes and jump into the water. No, that's not what I believe. I was you haven't seen me. Now I look like a couple of elephants put together. But there was a time when I didn't look like that. I was a pretty good swimmer. I was on the junior state team. And we had a rigorous warm-up exercise, which we had to do every day for 45 minutes. Warm-up exercises before we entered the swimming pool and started swimming. Okay, so I bring that culture, if you like, into my teaching as well, because we seem to think that political is always there. We seem to think that state has always been there. I'm sure you have gone through books like State and Government in Ancient India. A.S. Altekar wrote one book. There was no state in ancient India. In fact, there was no state in any part of the world, ancient world. There was no this thing at all. And state is a word that comes into being in the modern period. So it is something that we should talk about only in the modern period. Now, political, I have a book by a very good uh, writer, McAuliffe, who talked about political thought in the medieval period. And I was medieval period of Europe, that is. And I was taken aback and I said, this is McAuliffe. And how is it that he's talking about the political in the medieval period? So I made it a point to sit and read that whole book. Nowhere does he use the word political. Yet the title of the book is Political Thought. His publisher must have asked him to put that. Or it is quite possible that given the fact that English is a very, very poor language, an extremely poor language, uh, it is incapable of conveying some of the things that happened in history. So, for example, if you take the Greek polis, P-O-L-I-S, the Greek polis gets routinely translated into English as city-state. But if you read this great scholar, two scholars I shall quote you, One is Gompers and the other is FDH Quito. They will both tell you that the Greek polis was neither a city nor was it a state. And their advice is don't try to translate this into English, because if you do, you will not find a translation. So they say wherever the necessity arises, talk about the Greek polis as the polis itself. Call it the polis. And the Koinonia Politicae is extremely important because of the fact that when we talk about the political, that is the expression that introduced us to the political part. Politics was the activity of the police, and you will see that when we talk about the political, it is something that is derived out of this Koinonia Politicae, this expression, phrase, call it whatever you like. So what I want to do with you is to first talk about the political, because there are a number of words that have come into English, and these words, for various reasons, have been extremely poor translations. And the following of these poor translations essentially means that we will be, in some form or the other, we will be bringing more misunderstanding into the political thought of the people that we are studying, rather than bringing in a correct understanding. Okay, that is something that we have to guard against constantly. We have to be very, very vigilant about the words that we are using. And another example is, see, the Romans didn't have they didn't have a police. Please remember that. What was the Roman Empire actually began as a republic of sorts, an ancient republic, in which there was a triumvirate, and the triumvirate was, one was the Senate, which is represented by influential people of Roman society. Then there was the leader or the king, and then the third was the magistrates. Okay, that is what you find in the Roman Republic, till such time that Julius Caesar comes. Please remember one thing. People think Caesar is a title, especially because after Julius Caesar, you find Augustus Caesar, and then you find the Russian rulers who call themselves czars, CZARs. They call themselves czars, which is a corruption of Caesar. So Caesar became a word that was coterminous with an emperor. No. Julius Caesar is the name of the person. His full name was Julius Caesar. And what did he do? He converted this ancient form of republic that you find in Rome, or you found at one time in Rome, into an empire. Okay. And I'm sure none of you know about this comic series called Asterix. Those of you who can afford it should get yourself Asterix comics, because one, they are incredibly funny. I've never read anything that is so funny in my life. The second thing is that they jocularly depict real history. That is the thing. They jocularly depict real history. And what we find, I didn't know this. I was a kid when I was reading it. There is this thing called Asterix and Cleopatra, where Julius Caesar marries Cleopatra, and they have a son called Caesarion. So I had a pretty good laugh. And I said, oh, Caesarion is like, C-section, the surgery that you perform to bring a baby out of a mother's womb. And much to my consternation, in later life, I discovered that Caesar's son was actually called Caesarion. Okay, so that is because his father's name was Caesar. And we think Caesar is a title. It's not. It became a title. It's like Xerox. Xerox is the name of a company. What they do is photocopying. Okay, what they do is basically photocopying, but we say Xeroxing. Get me Xerox copies. We don't say get photocopies. Now another word that has become like that is Google. Google is the name of a search engine. It's actually a name of a company, as is Xerox. It is the name of a company. But we say now to search the net. Thank you, Mr. or Miss Redmi. Yeah. So we say, let's Google. This is what the Americans have started. Let's Google this term. Let's Google that term. Right? So that's how it came into being. So that's how Caesar also became a term, a verb, an adjective, and not a noun. So you will find that you have to be alive to these things. Since the Romans did not have anything like a polis and a political association, they translated that into Societas Civilis, which into English it got Societas, it should be, sorry, Societas Civilis, which got translated into English as civil society, but it has not meant the same thing to different people. The word disappears after the Roman Empire, reappears in Lockean times. So what I intend to do is to first talk to you tomorrow when I meet you. I will first look at the, I'll have a look at the syllabus, and then I'll talk to you about the mutations of meanings of different words and how some can be used with those mutated meanings and how some cannot be used. And we will start with the political as such. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I hope to see you tomorrow again, and thank you. So get prepared to go to the next class. You'll have to probably change software. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, sir.
Bye. Have a nice day, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Same
Thank-
to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. The good news is you'll have better teachers coming now. It won't be as boring as this. So, yeah. So, thank you very much. So, see you tomorrow again. Same time, 9 o'clock. I'll put a link on the group, and please hit the link and come. Okay. Thank you very much. And I'm also going to post the video. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Right. Bye
Yes,
bye.
sir. Thank you, sir.